Lad os komme i gang med mødet. Vi er allerede ganske få minutter forsinket, og vi har fået fint besøg fra Sverige, fra FN's organisation FAO. FAO er dem, der bekæmper sult i verden, og her kommer Jakob Lundberg. Udover at han har en Ph.D. i ressourcestyring af naturressourcer, så er han også arbejder han med informationer fra FAO omkring udviklingen af landbrug og under hensyn til at skabe flere fødevareprodukter. Og det er simpelthen i lyset af, at man står foran en af de største behov for at skabe fødevarer i mange årtier. Det vurderes, at man skal på 17 år skabe 50% flere fødevarer. Det vil jeg sige noget om. Velkommen til. Og by the way, it's going to be in English. He's from Sweden, so welcome to here.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I speak Swedish. It's always a bit tricky whether to speak Swedish or English. So we have to bear with me in English. Very briefly, first of all, thank the organizer for inviting me. We're happy to be here in this extremely interesting event. I look forward to learn more also, so I will stay until the lunch at least. So I will have quite a lot of information, so I will start just now. So we are in the middle of a pretty interesting time now, because we have succeeded since the Green Revolution to provide a number of people that we were, according to the most skeptical thinkers, would not be possible, but we're still succeeding this very good. But still, there's to some kind of environmental cost. So I will sort of see the challenge, and then where we are, and then go back to how can we meet this challenge for the future to 2050. Very briefly, FAO was 1 week before UN was established. It was FAO came about, and the background I think is an interesting thing to sort of notice, because also this event here, that was Roosevelt was gathering allied in Hot Springs, where he was in the summer for curing his polio, chronic polio. And the whole idea was that we cannot maintain a peace in the world if people can't feed themselves. And if we go back in history, almost all the revolution has a component of hunger or high food prices. So it's a very interesting topic, and also for this day. And I think most of you know FAO, since you are in this field. But we're not only working with agriculture, also fisheries, forestry, rural development, animal health, etc. Our main objective is to combat the hunger in the world. So it's not so much an issue here, because we are eating more than we need, most of us. So the main work of FAO is carried out in poorer countries. One of our main objectives is to take down the hunger, and the Millennium Development Goal #1 is helping the hungry and the poverty and hunger. And it goes so and so. We're getting there. It's still a pretty challengeable future if we can reach there. We have some figures here. The Millennium MDG, the Millennium Development goals, and we can see, we should be on this target here. This is the World Food Summit. We're halving the number, and this is the Millennium Development Goal, halving the proportion. So we see we're around here now, and if we should reach the Millennium Development Goal #1 to 2015, we should be there. So we're approaching, but it's still a lot of challenge to get there. And then if we start to look, where's the challenge most severe? It goes the best development we can see in terms of hunger during the last 10 years is in China, India. So it actually decreases now between 1990 to 2012. And so in Latin America and Asia, decreasing numbers, the same in South America and Central America. But then in Sub-Saharan Africa, that's really where we have a big challenge. Not so much in numbers, because there are more people suffering from hunger in Asia, but in proportion, it's absolutely worse in this part of the world. That's a bit of the background of the current situation. And some of the reasons why we have this extremely high numbers of hunger, it's roughly 100 Sweden that are suffering from chronic hunger. And it's still pretty little, we don't hear that much about it compared to other crises, and I think it's because it's a slow crisis, it's a gradual crisis that goes on each day. But it's extreme number of people suffering, and many people die every year. So we should really do the best we can. And interesting to see now, since the food price crisis 2007, 2008, when the food prices started to go up, before the food prices went down for almost 100 years, and now it started to be an issue discussed in the G8, the G20, the Davos World Economic Forum. It's up to the high-level agenda now, so it really has happened something since 2007. But the main reason behind this hunger is, of course, poverty. Many of the countries where you have high numbers of hunger is also very poor countries. There is food in the stores, but you can't afford it. And then governance is a critical issue. And if you have corrupt leaders that sort of take the money for themselves instead of working with your people, that's of course a very hard issue. But another issue is that we can see that on the development aid, it's gone down. The proportion that was relocated for agriculture development has gone down substantially compared to 1980, when it was around 16% of the development budget, the foreign development budget. And today it's around 4 or 5%. Despite that, the World Bank came out with a report in 2008 saying that agriculture is the best investment when it comes to poverty alleviation. And then we also start to see this thing that also a bit of the topic of today, that start to be an increased challenge of resources. We see a growing middle class in China, India, etc. And the resource, the wealth also brings more resource consumption. More meat, more dairy, more fruit, and so on. So it comes from several pressure. The pressure comes from several ways, also biofuels, etc. So then, the big challenge then is how can we feed the global population to 2050? So that doesn't increase around 2 billion people more. And we also see that most of these people who live in the cities, today we have about half of the population live in the cities. So you come further and further away from your resource base where you produce your food, which I also think has a pretty important, is an important issue, because if we don't see what we eat, we also sometimes start to lose the important dimensions of the food. And we see this income rising. Now we are, of course, passing a global crisis. So the challenge is 60% more food to 2050 is the latest estimate from FAO. And we see that the socioeconomic conditions are changing. And how about natural resources like water, land? We have enough. And then comes new challenges like biofuel production, this land acquisition, foreign land investment, sometimes called land grab. Countries that see that they cannot produce the food for the population, start to invest abroad to secure it. So you don't. 2007, 2008, we had rise around 20, 30 countries, and this most leaders don't want to happen in their countries. So we see a new strategy that countries go out and invest in poorer countries where they're weak governance and where land is cheap. So this is some of the challenges. If we go back and see how did we come where we are? For the past 50 years, we can see that the number of cultivated land increased by 12%. But we had a 200% production increase. And most of this production increase was in irrigated land. So this is sort of the basic that we have took us where we are today. And of course, I will not go into this, but to a high environmental cost. We know about climate change, we know about species extinction, we know about more demand from an increasing human population. We know about all these curves going up, global acceleration I'll speak about. the Anthropocene. We come to a world where human is dominating increasingly. So this is also the challenge. More people, more environmental change, and more pressure on the natural resource base. So from this perspective, I feel before I was working more just to secure these hungry people to produce more. And now we see that we come to some kind of end. We can't just produce as we did. So coming new way of thinking. One example is this Save and Grow. It's a manual that came out 2 years ago, and it's sort of to try to find ways that includes environment better in production, to sort of mitigate some of the negative effects of the current production that we have seen. So it's not an issue whether we should go all organic or if it should be conventional, but if we're organic, we have to be in the planetary boundaries. If we are conventional farming, we also have to take down the pressure on the resources. I will not go into this, but there are some others. There's something called climate smart agriculture, which is sort of trying to mitigate the climate challenge. Also an initiative that came in the last 3 years. So there are many new sort of techniques coming in that FAO and others promoting now. And again, just to say that the big challenge, of course, is where should we produce? It's not that we should produce maybe more all over, but the big challenge is in this part of the world. We have also the expectation of population increase. If we see for predictions, we can say this is for the next 8 years. We can see that Europe actually go down, while in Africa we have a big population increase. And already today we have a high, as I said before, a high number of food insecure people. So here's really the big challenge when it comes to production. And then an issue that's coming up more and more is the completely unnecessary food waste and food losses. And I think you've heard about that. It's starting to be a big issue in the European Parliament and also nationally, both in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. But how can you reduce food losses? About a third of all the food that is produced today globally is wasted. And the reasons behind it, very briefly, are pretty different. If you compare to Sub-Saharan Africa, most occurs what we call post-harvest loss. This is bad storage, bad disruptions, eating up the rats and so on. While in our part of the world, it's rather in the later stage, consumer and also in retailing. And then, why we waste so much food, I think is pretty much the reason that we don't spend so much money on food. It's still pretty cheap for most people that has a work, I would say. If you compare Denmark, for instance, spend around 11% of the income on food, while in some parts of the world we spend up to 70% of the income. So the food price increase in these places has much more dramatic effects than it has in Sweden and Denmark. So that's and so for this, also linking up to this event here, we now start to see an increasing debate in the Nordic countries. People start to be more and more concerned about losing really good productive land. These are some clips. This from Norway. It started with IKEA establishment outside of Oslo. It was some of the best land there. In Sweden, this is stopped by the Minister of Rural Affairs. Same thing started to be a debate in Sweden, despite I would say Swedish agriculture issues are really, they're not to priority at all. I think they're much more prioritized in both Norway and Denmark. But it's really starting to be a concern, and Denmark and Norway has stronger legislation still for production. Sweden has a pretty weak one. So how should we sort of cope with the future? What can we do to sort of combat this hunger and meet this challenge? So in order to achieve a better food security in the world, we need to get better access for farmers, for poor farmers. So the risks when climate starts to be more changeable and so on, they have to have some kind of like we have here, that have some kind of insurance set up. and also both from increased investment, both from national funds, like in Africa, also in the ODA, and also in the private sector. And we have also released a report 2 years ago that shows that if you work with gender issues, we can increase the number of, or reduce the number of hungry, around 100 million people. So, and there's no losses there. So food waste and gender dimension is something pretty simple issues that can have a big impact. And then of course, knowledge, technology, infrastructure, markets, transparency. Another issue that started to be interesting, that's we learned from Brazil, for instance, is starting to, for the poorest people, to give them some kind of cash transfer and safety nets. That's also an interesting issue, but this has a big impact. So, summing up. So, given this global environmental challenge, what should we do? We can see that we need local solutions, because most of these hungry people, they are not having access to the global trade. So around 2.5 billion people live still on small-scale farming. And we also have to, in our part of the world, all the world, to foster better consumption, to decrease meat consumption. It will probably be beneficial if we think of resources, especially us. Some parts of the world, they should increase the meat consumption. It's a bit context related. We can also see health issues with that. And then reduce food waste and food losses. And in summary then, today we produce enough food. If you think globally, just the food waste that is wasted in the US would be enough to feed all the hungry people in the world. So it's not an issue that's not produced enough at the current state. It will be in the future, 50% more for 2050 our expectation. For sub-Saharan Africa, 100% more production. So, and then, this challenge is absolutely possible, but we need to change production to be more sustainable, and distribution of food is really a critical issue for the future.